Hey, how you doing? Blake here. I'm just going to talk about how to synthesize wind using white noise. So I've got in front of me Ableton's Operator, which is just a synth. Nice. So this has in it a white noise oscillator. Nice and harsh. Cool. So the way that this works is essentially it's relying on filtering. So if I get an auto filter and increase the resonance a little bit. The resonance plays a massive part in the tone of this. So obviously with a low pass filter like this, it will take out all of the high frequencies as you desire. So the resonance in this, if you have it too low like that, it's a little bit fuzzy, or yeah, it doesn't have much definition to it. But if you increase the resonance a little bit, it puts a small peak, obviously, just above wherever the cutoff point is, and that resonance can really help, especially when there's a bit of movement in this, to give it a little bit of structure and tonal change over time. So obviously that being static doesn't quite sound like wind. So how do we fix that? If we grab an LFO, I believe this one should work. This LFO is just going to send a value between 0 and 100, or 0 to 127 maybe, to wherever you put it. So if I were to map this one to the cutoff frequency here, we're going to get something unusable. But if I move this to the random setting here, it will start stepping at random values. So this hard step is definitely not what we want, so we need to smooth that out a fair bit. The smooth function will literally do as you would expect it to, smooth between each change. So now that we've got this, it's still moving a bit too much, and that's not what we want. So this depth parameter here can be constrained down to, well, nothing if you want it to stay still, but what we want is just that tiny little bit of movement there, so somewhere around 10%, a bit under. Starting to get a little bit more realistic now. So this offset value here will, as you would expect, offset it between its standard 0% or 50% and all the way down, all the way up. So this offset can then be used to attenuate or increase this, the cutoff a tiny bit. So in higher or lower wind settings, lower sounds like this, just a grumble, I guess. And then if you were to do something a little bit more intense and raise it a little bit, those fluctuations can get you to a point where it's starting to sound a little bit more like real wind. In order to make this not so dry, you can put a convolution reverb. There's probably a few different ways you can go about doing this, but convolution reverb offers a few benefits in that it is a recorded space with an impulse, so that it's got some, I guess, natural twang to it a little bit. In this, I'm going to go for bigger spaces, and I'm just going to pick, I don't know, open space maybe. It might work. I'm not terribly familiar with this. This is a new device that's come out in Ableton 11 in the last couple of weeks. So, as well, the other thing to note, whenever you're applying reverb to anything, just about, the dry wet should definitely, most of the time, unless it's a super creative application, be under 50%. So for this, I'm just going to experiment. If I put it all the way up, it might just sound washed out. Yeah, way too much. But a small amount of that. Cool. There's something else that's bothering me about this though. At the moment, the low pass filter is doing a really good job of giving us the upper threshold of what we want frequency-wise, but there's still a little bit too much low end in it. So what I could do is one of two things. I could either grab an EQ and then literally just cut the bottom of that off. Wait, hang on. And the effect that you get with this is proximity. So if this is higher up and that band becomes thinner between that and that, it's going to sound a little bit more distant. There's a sweet spot somewhere in here that will make it sound natural and distant versus natural and close. And if you make it lower, it should kind of sound like the abrasion coming from the wind is touching a surface that's a tad bit closer to you. So environment-wise, if you could imagine this lower end stuff being, say, inside a building or an alleyway or something that is in direct vicinity to yourself, that's when you'll start getting lower frequencies, especially from wind, because it's, just being noise. It would have to be an object close enough in proximity to you to be tunneling like that. So up high is maybe just between 1 and 200 hertz is the sweet spot for that. But the other thing we can do is, if we were to duplicate this LFO and then use this LFO not in its intended way at all, and then remap that to the cutoff frequency of that, and then offset it back down to the level we had it at before, it will then sort of stammer through those parts. Maybe decrease the depth a little bit because it's too intense. And potentially as well use this inbuilt EQ in this one plugin, just to not have any of the reverberance hitting the EQ to begin with. As well, signal flow, if we were to put this before the EQ, we might have a better time again. That way the EQ is not getting fed any of this and the filter's not having to do as much work. But yeah, cool. You get the drift there. Thanks heaps for watching. Give this a try yourself. Do your thing. Cool. Cheers. Bye.